England are through to the quarter-finals of Euro 2020 after beating Germany 2-0 at Wembley. The second-half goals came from Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane. It's England's first win over Germany in a tournament knockout match since 1966. South Africa's top court has sentenced the former president, Jacob Zuma, to 15 months in jail for contempt of court. He was convicted after failing to appear at an anti-corruption inquiry in February. Rebel forces in Ethiopia's northern Tigray province have retaken the regional capital Mekelle, which was seized by federal troops last year. They've called for international agencies to bring in desperately needed aid. And Serena Williams is out of Wimbledon in the first round of the competition. She was leading in the first set, but then had to retire injured.
Ethiopians are hopeful for peace after the government declared Monday it would observe an immediate ceasefire and withdraw from the country's Tigray area. In Italy, foreign and development ministers of the G20 countries gather in Matera to discuss food security and cooperation on vaccines and climate change. In South Africa, former President Jacob Zuma is sentenced to 15 months in prison for failing to appear in court over corruption charges. And people keep watch in Surfside, Florida, where a deadly building collapse last week left more than 150 people missing.
A former top prosecutor in South Korea has officially launched his bid to run for president next year. Yoon Suk-yeol stepped down as prosecutor general in March. He clashed with the Moon Jae-in administration after leading a corruption probe involving key government officials.
The current administration must be overturned. I am ready to sacrifice and dedicate everything for the people and the future of the nation.
In his news conference, Yoon called the Moon administration corrupt and incompetent. He accused the government of failing to address skyrocketing land prices and other issues. South Koreans are set to vote next March, choosing the successor to President Moon. The country's constitution limits the president to serving a single 5-year term. Even before his official announcement, Yoon has been leading polls for the top job. There's growing speculation he'll join the conservative opposition People Power Party. Moving now to Tokyo's Olympic torch relay, as the host city is seeing another rise in coronavirus infections. The metropolitan government says the relay will not go on public roads through the city for at least the first 8 days. The Olympic flame is currently passing through Kanagawa Prefecture near Tokyo. It'll go on a 15-day trip through the capital beginning on July 9th. Torchbearers will not be allowed to run on public roads in most areas of Tokyo, except some remote islands. Instead, organizers will hold a daily torch lighting ceremony without spectators. Officials have not decided what to do with the relay after July 16th. It's scheduled to end a week later, just in time for the opening ceremony. Now the change comes as the capital struggles with another surge in coronavirus cases. Tokyo reported 476 new cases on Tuesday. It marks a week-on-week increase for the 10th straight day. The state of emergency was lifted on Monday last week. The health minister says the government may consider imposing another one, but he says it might be too soon and prove ineffective because people could ignore it.
If more people are moving around at night, I think we need to carefully analyze the situation. We need to consider how to effectively curb the increase in new infections.
Now, Japan's vaccination rollout is gaining speed, including for artists. 18,000 artists and staff will get their shots at the National Theater and the National Arts Center in Tokyo starting July 5th.
If we get vaccinated, our performances would be less likely to be canceled because of the spread of infection. I think that customers would be able to buy tickets without worrying.
Other workplace vaccination centers aren't able to get enough vaccines. One group says it's only getting 1/10 of the doses it applied for. At this venue, the freezer has arrived, but the vaccine hasn't.
We will be in a tough situation if people come here and can't get vaccinated. So I hope we can get enough doses.
The government is temporarily suspending applications for workplace inoculations because of the unexpected demand. Now, the minister in charge of the rollout, Kono Taro, said on Tuesday he'll make some decisions on the issue by the end of this week. Researchers in Britain have found combining doses of COVID-19 vaccines made by AstraZeneca and Pfizer-BioNTech provides a strong immune response. The group, led by the University of Oxford, conducted clinical trials that began in February involving 830 people. The results showed if the Pfizer vaccine is given 4 weeks after the AstraZeneca shot, higher antibody and T-cell responses were induced than if the order was reversed. The highest T-cell response came from a combination of AstraZeneca followed by the Pfizer vaccine. And the highest antibody response was seen after 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine.
I think these mix and match type studies are really important when it comes to thinking about how these vaccines are going to be used globally. And other studies are looking at other vaccines, including the Chinese vaccines and the Sputnik V vaccines, because these are the vaccines that might be used more in low and middle income countries.
The researchers did not mention side effects or other details. They aim to submit a paper on their study to a medical journal. Bangladesh is struggling with a new spike in coronavirus cases that's forcing the government to impose a strict lockdown starting on Thursday. People will not be allowed to leave their homes except for emergencies. The announcement sparked a rush to ferry terminals by migrant workers exiting the capital Dhaka for their rural homes. The government announced free food and cash assistance for people who are temporarily jobless, including laborers and transport workers. But many fear the lockdown could be extended and impact their livelihoods. On Monday, Bangladesh logged a record of more than 8,300 new cases. That brings the country's total to nearly 900,000. The death toll has topped 14,000. Now, Australian cities are also starting to lock down to battle a fresh outbreak of the more contagious Delta variant first identified in India. 19 new cases were confirmed Tuesday in New South Wales, the country's most populous state. People in and around the state capital, Sydney, began a 2-week lockdown on Saturday. Residents are being asked to stay home except for essential outings. Long lines are forming at drive-through testing sites as the state government is calling on citizens to get tested if they have been in close contact with infected people. Other cities across the nation, including Perth and Brisbane, also imposed similar restrictions on Tuesday. Australia has largely managed to contain the coronavirus through strict border controls and by tracing infection routes. No new cases have been reported in Sydney since early May, other than some arriving from overseas. But infections have been on the increase over the past 2 weeks after a driver servicing international flight crews tested positive for the Delta variant. Next, health authorities in Finland say about 300 people tested positive for the coronavirus after returning from Russia, where they were watching the UEFA European Football Championship. Media reports say about 3,000 Finnish supporters returned by bus after a group stage match in St. Petersburg on June 21st. About 800 of them reportedly did not go through virus testing, nor were asked to quarantine. Finnish authorities are calling for all the supporters who returned from St. Petersburg to take virus tests and isolate until they test negative. Cases of the Delta variant are rising in the city. Soccer players and staff members were also found to have been infected with the virus at the South American Football Championship taking place in Brazil. Japan's SoftBank Group says it suspended production of its humanoid robot Pepper because of poor sales brought on by the coronavirus. The company's robotics unit says production of the robot at a plant in Taiwan came to a stop last summer. Officials say demand in Europe and elsewhere had weakened as many commercial facilities were unable to make in-store sales due to the pandemic. They also say inventory remains sufficient for leasing services. SoftBank has begun reducing staff numbers and redeploying personnel in its robotics division in the United States, Britain, France, and Japan. The humanoid robot first went on sale in 2015. It's designed to recognize basic human emotions and has been used at company receptions and commercial facilities. SoftBank officials say they'll consider resuming production if demand recovers. In other news, a private jet that landed in Tokyo's Haneda Airport Tuesday afternoon looked perfectly normal on the outside. But what made it special was on the inside, a fuel made from used cooking oil and a kind of algae. The venture firm that makes the fuel says it's the first time a private aircraft has flown on it. The Japanese firm uses cooking oil and the algae called euglena to produce it. And they say it's a step towards a sustainable future.
We would like to further promote this initiative to help achieve the country's goal of carbon neutrality by 2050.
The biofuel emits carbon dioxide when it combusts, but the algae it's made from absorb the gas in photosynthesis, which helps reduce the carbon footprint. The firm plans to establish a large factory by around 2025 to produce 250,000 kiloliters of the fuel a year. The Japanese government has announced plans to launch a probe with the goal of bringing back samples from one of the moons of Mars. A midterm report on space policy says the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency will launch the probe in fiscal 2024. It intends to reach one of the 2 Martian moons called Phobos and have the craft return to Earth 5 years later. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide says space is a frontier that allows people to dream and could serve as a foundation for future economic growth. The space policy report also says the government wants to develop a system which makes use of small satellites so officials can get a quick grasp of the situation in the event of natural disasters. Next in weather, strong thunderstorms are expected to hit the western part of Europe as we head into Wednesday. Our meteorologist John Thuneau explains the situation in our World Weather Report.
Hello, it's been a bit of a stormy pattern across the western areas of Europe as we had a low pressure system that's a bit of a cutoff system that continues to spin over places like France and into Germany. And we will still see this system slowly drifting toward the east, which means as we go into Wednesday, we'll also be seeing some rain and some thunderstorms associated with that low. And we have another low up toward the western areas of Russia that's going to bring some rain to Moscow as we go through today on Wednesday. Down toward the south, it's been hot, and we're still talking about highs into the upper 30s in places like Athens as we go through Wednesday. 37 for the high there, 31 in Rome. And notice this, much cooler back to the north and west, 18 for the high on Wednesday with showers in Paris, thunderstorms into Warsaw with a high of 31 as we go through Wednesday. Meanwhile, we have been keeping an eye out on the rainy season front, which was particularly enhanced down toward Okinawa. I noticed the clouds really billowing up here. Nago in Okinawa saw 200 millimeters of rainfall in just a 6-hour period. So it was a bit of a rain dumper there. And we are still going to be keeping an eye out on this front as it slowly lifts toward the north. And hopefully it's going to ease up a little bit over into Okinawa. Maybe seeing the end of the rainy season for that region as we go toward the end of this week. But elsewhere, seeing some more rain associated with this front, and so have the umbrellas nearby. Places like Osaka and Tokyo, seeing the rain picking up once again in earnest, like a little bit more in terms of what we're expecting by the time we go into Thursday and Friday. So we are looking at more of a wetter latter half of the week. Sapporo looking at highs into the mid-20s. In fact, even warmer than Tokyo coming up as we go on to Friday with a high of 27. Back toward the west, southern areas of China also dealing with the same frontal pattern. So dealing with rain and thunderstorms as we go throughout the day on Wednesday. From Hong Kong with a high of 30 to 27 in Chongqing. Also seeing some thunderstorms up toward Beijing with a high of 33 for the day. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.